All right, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? You got to put your headphones on. This is a new experience for us. It's probably a new experience for some of you. Kind of like a silent disco, you got to put the headphones on. But if you're close enough up front, hopefully my voice will carry over and project. So first off, good afternoon. Just to get a bit of sense for who's in the room, just raise your hands if you're part of like the IT organization in your company. A lot of you, okay. How about security folks? Quite a few, okay. And developers? Few, okay, thank you, that's great, that's helpful. And then how many people here watch the keynote in the morning? Okay, almost everyone, great, okay, awesome. Well, we got a jam-packed session for you. I have my awesome colleagues, Netta and Lou, that are gonna come up. We're gonna do a bunch of demos. We're gonna cover what we call end-to-end security for your AI platform, apps and agents. We're going to get into some of Agent 365. We're going to get into some of the Foundry control plane that you saw in the keynote. And then we're going to get into the Defender, Purview, and Entra products and what we're doing inside each of those. My name's Hiren Oberoi. I'm the VP for our data and AI security at Microsoft. And it's my pleasure to kind of walk you through all the work that the team's been doing over the last couple of months, working really hard towards this event. So let me start out with what we've been hearing from customers over the last, I would say, 2 years or so. So over the last 2 years, if you remember, we started out with a lot of work around Gen AI apps, co-pilots, things like ChatGPT, customers deploying them in the enterprise. And a lot of what we heard back in terms of security and risks was they were concerned about data oversharing and data leak. That was number one concern. Shadow AI, we heard about that in the keynote. Who's using what AI apps in my organization? New AI threats like prompt injection attacks, vulnerabilities like in your supply chain, and then of course, regulatory compliance. So one of the benefits of my job is I get to travel in a number of different countries, and no matter where I go, they're dealing with what to do with AI regulations, and each region and each country is sort of coming up with their version of sort of some kind of AI regulation. The one that's probably the most mature at this point would be the EU AI Act, and we'll get into that. And so what we've been doing is we've been hearing these questions from customers for the last couple of years now. And so we've been working with our security platform to make sure we provide an end-to-end view of it. So it's Defender, Purview, Intune, Sentinel, and Entra. So Defender's our threat protection and a posture management solution. Purview's our data security and compliance solution. Intune's for device management. Sentinel's our SIM and sort of our data platform underneath. And then Entra is for identity and access. And all of that is powered by our industry-leading threat signals. So we process about 100 trillion signals a day. It's more than anyone else. And then we're supporting that with a number of our security services as well. So this has been our platform for security for a while. And we had a choice to make, which was that do we build new products to secure AI workloads, or do we extend our existing products to take on that workload? And overwhelmingly, we heard from you all that please don't build the new stuff, just extend what we're used to using, extend what we've already got and what we're familiar with. And so that's been our approach, is we're going to extend the platform with purpose-built capabilities to secure AI and agents. We've been actually doing that for a while, and we've just got more innovation coming out at this Ignite. And then it's not just Copilot, agents built in Copilot, or agents built in Copilot Studio and Foundry, but also third-party Gen AI apps as well. We want to think about this holistically. Now, one of the things that has been new over the last year or so is what I'll say the rise of agents. So about a year and a half ago, everyone was talking about Copilots. About a year ago, the conversation shifted to agents. And I always say this, when it comes to AI, what we say here, it's changing so fast. 6 months from now, there's going to be something new we're going to be talking about in terms of how these things evolve. But when we think about agents, there's some additional risks and concerns that we have to think about. So just like the Gen AI apps, how do you discover the agents? How do you manage them? In the case of agents, because they behave more autonomously, are they behaving appropriately? Because it's not always a human in the loop. Maybe it checks in with the human once in a while, but unlike a Copilot or Gen AI app where it's constantly interacting, agents tend to do things behind the scenes. So are they doing the right things? Who are they sharing sensitive information with? And then are they well governed and audited? And so what we've done is we've taken those challenges we've been hearing, and we've added to it this concern around agent sprawl, how many agents are in my organization, and then what resources do they have access to. And it turns out that all the work we've been doing over the years around identity and access with users, a lot of that applies to agents. And so the team was able to pivot quite quickly and apply all the identity and access functionality we've been building in Entra towards agents. And I'll talk more about that in a minute as well. Now, to double click a little bit more here, I like to show this because this is sort of a view. It's not everything, but we try to get most of it in, which is the threat map. And this is the threat map, I'd say, before agents. So if you think about the platform and model the apps and then the usage layer, you've got at the platform layer things to worry about like training data poisoning, model theft. At the app layer, you're looking at prompt injection attacks, data leaks, MCP server and extensions, so insecure, making sure those are secure. And at the usage level is, are we disclosing any sensitive information? Is there any third-party LLM-based apps or plugins that aren't secure in my organization? So that kind of gives you a sense of what that looks like. And then when you add to it what we need to think about with agents, so that's really in the AI agents and apps, that middle row that you see, you now have questions about, hey, is the agent intent being tampered with? Is there misbehavior or malfunction? How do I think about the agents using the tools in my organization? Is there misuse going on over there? And then how do I think about any kind of memory and context poisoning as well? So additional risks come about. And so this is one of the views we've tried to build that says, hey, this is the map of how to think about security risks around apps as well as agents. And then when you look at what does it take to truly secure and govern your AI across your organization, it's not just the security team's job. There's a role that IT has to play. For example, IT is doing the onboarding and offboarding of users, and so now you got to think about onboarding and offboarding of agents. And then you have a role for the development teams to play as the developers build apps themselves. And so we talk about this idea in the keynote. Judson mentioned observability. The core observability, being able to look at everything that's going on in the organization, it requires coordination with IT, with the development teams and the security teams. And then we have this notion that the security is a sort of primitive that is part of everything that these different teams do. So what that means is, if you think about IT, they're going to be working in the Microsoft Admin Center, and we'll talk about Agent 365. Developers are going to be working in Foundry, so we'll talk about the Foundry control plane. And then the security teams, for those of you that are part of the security organization, are working in Defender, Purview, and Entra. And then what we're calling the sort of primitives, like the capabilities like the agent identities, the data labels, the posture, the conditional access policies, those should show up both in the IT control plane, the developer control plane, as well as the security products that you know and love. So let's dive into this. So we'll start with Agent 365. So as you saw in the keynote, the key insight that Jared mentioned actually when he was doing the demo was that the way to manage agents is to extend the infrastructure that you trust for managing users. So that today is Entra for identity and access. And so Agent 365 is the control plane for agents, and it includes these 5 core areas of capabilities. So the first is the registry. One unified registry powered by Entra. We're going to show you that in a demo in a second, but you've got to have visibility into which agents you have in your organization. And the agents in that registry don't have to have an Entra ID, agent ID. They can be any agent, and you can register those in the registry. Obviously, if they have an Entra agent ID, there's more you can do with it, but even if it didn't, you can still register it in the registry. Then we have access control. So being able to extend conditional access that you have for users, extending those policies for agents as well. If you saw the keynote, you would have seen in the demo, we've got this really great visualization that shows you how are my different agents across platforms interacting with each other, where are the dependencies, where's data being sent back and forth. That's an important piece. Interop has to do both with apps and data. So this idea that if an agent has to collaborate with users, it's sending them emails, it's sending them Teams chats, how do they work with the apps that the users are using? But also how do they interop with the data? So this notion of work IQ that was talked about is how does it get access to the data that's necessary for it to do the job that it's called to do? And then the last but not least, which is what we're here to talk about, really are the security capabilities. And so taking a lot of Defender, Purview, and Entra capabilities we've been building for GenAI apps and copilots over the last couple of years, applying that to agents is a core piece of this. So if I double click on that, Here's a little bit of what you get from the security side. So you've got, I mentioned agent ID and the registry, that's a core piece of it. This notion of agent lifecycle management, how do you onboard an agent, how do you offboard an agent? Agents tend to be, I think, will be more ephemeral than users. User might join a company and leave a company. They might, stay there for at least a year, if not a couple of years. Agents might come in and out, in a matter of months or even in a matter of weeks. And so making sure that when an agent's done its thing, you can offboard it, take away its access privileges so that you don't have them hanging around and having all this legacy bloat in your organization. On the data security side, visibility into sensitive data that the agents are accessing, being able to block the exfiltration of sensitive data that it happens, and then on the compliance side, being able to audit the agent's interactions and provide reports of those assessments back to compliance auditors as well. That's a key piece of it. And then the last one has to do with both posture management and threat protection. So do my agents have any vulnerabilities that I need to worry about, including the supply chain in terms of the models and things like that the agents might be using? And then if I've got attackers trying to get in or trying to manipulate the agents, being able to detect that in real time as well as block it. So lots of value from Entra, Purview, and Defender, and we'll get into that in some of the demos. Beyond the security capabilities, will also include, as I mentioned, WorkIQ, access to Microsoft 365 apps, extensibility through Power Apps and Power BI, and then all of that through your unified admin view, which is the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So all of you saw a really great demo from Jared in the keynote today, so I'm not going to show another demo over here, but I did want to give a little bit of a sneak peek into what that looks like. And over here you might see that over here you can see the number of agents in my inventory, and down here you can see agents that were Microsoft built, but also agents that are built on other platforms down there. So just a brief view of what that admin center looks like, and it's giving the visibility to the IT audience. So we're going to talk about IT right now, right? Now, let's talk about the next audience. We mentioned IT, we mentioned developers, and then we mentioned security people. So let's shift our gears to developers for a second. So AI developers are expected to take greater responsibility for AI safety and security. This is just an expectation, and we're seeing that in organizations, and particularly seeing that in AI native companies. And more companies are building with open source today. And so if you're going to be building with open source, you want to make sure that open source, you have visibility into any kind of vulnerabilities that might exist in that supply chain. You also want to be able to catch those vulnerabilities early in the cycle. So the earlier you can catch it before you get to deployment, the higher cost savings you can have. And then once you've deployed it, you want to have constant runtime monitoring. And then if you pick up issues during runtime, you want to be able to send those signals back to the developer so that they can fix it at the root issue of the app itself. So it's not just, like I said, it's not just the security team's job. The development teams have a role to play here. And so this idea of securing the AI workload between developers, between IT, between the security teams, it's a team sport. The security teams on the right-hand side are going to be doing things like monitoring, looking at identity and access, looking at the posture. And then on the left-hand side, the developers are going to be working with the red teaming tools, looking at safety guardrails, looking at the development workflows, getting signals back into the development tools, and then being able to make updates as we go. So the key thing we're doing there is what we call the Foundry control plane. So the Foundry control plane is where the developer gets that end-to-end observability into the agent fleet. It's going to have controls for safety as well as security. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the same security primitives from Entra, from Defender, from Purview that are going to surface through Foundry. So let me show you what that looks like. So here that you'll see in Foundry, this is the Foundry control plane. So you can see I'm in Foundry up here. I'm in the Operate tab. And in the Operate tab, I can see how many agents I'm looking at, what the estimated cost might be. And then I can see my active alerts. And these alerts, in this case, they're security alerts, and they're talking about jailbreak attempts. So these alerts are coming from Defender in this particular scenario. If I go to a different view here, where I'm in the compliance or governance view, I can see I can enable Purview right within Foundry. When I do this, what happens is all the data from my agents in Foundry are also fed through Purview. So I can now start to do things like monitor that for sensitive information, do the auditing on it, apply rules against that if I see policy violations and things like that. And then down here, you're going to see the specific recommendations. These are posture recommendations coming from Defender. In this particular case, it's around the Entra identity, and you've got the details here on the right-hand side. So just kind of a quick sneak peek of the developer view over here. Now, the last bit of this is shifting gears to the security side of the house. So on the security side of the house, we've seen an interesting dynamic emerge. What we're seeing is you've got the board of a company asking the CEO, what is your AI transformation strategy? The CEO is looking at their business leaders and their CISOs and the CIOs and saying, what is our plan? And the CIOs and CISOs, their job is to be enablers and not blockers. But for them to be enablers and not blockers, they have to kind of figure out what does the risk profile look like for all of these new things that the company is trying to build and innovate. And Judson spoke about this tension between innovation and governance and how do you bring those things together. One of the things I've seen often is you've got these AI risk committees forming. They might call them different things in different companies, but it's typically a mix of the CISO, the risk management leaders, sometimes the compliance officers, and there's a rich discussion that's happening across those to say, hey, how do we all coordinate so we build the right governance in place and we look at risk holistically? So one of the things we're doing is to say, okay, to give you that holistic view of risk, we're going to build what we call this security dashboard for AI. And the security dashboard for AI is, let me move this out of the way. Okay. The security dashboard for AI is going to give you this unified visibility into your risk. It's getting signals from Defender, it's getting signals from Purview, it's getting signals from Entra, and it's also going to get signals from other places like Foundry and other platforms that you might have. And it's combining those signals to give you a more holistic view of the risk. So for example, you'll see some demos where you might say, okay, this agent has a compromised identity, so there's an identity risk with it, but it also might have some data security risks with it, or it might have some vulnerabilities as well. So you want to be able to look at those things holistically. And I haven't even touched on the compliance pieces. And so that's what the security dashboard is going to be for. One of the key use cases here is going to be giving these risk leaders and CISOs the ability to report back to their boards, to their auditors on the AI risk and how they're managing controls around it in their organization. So here's again, quick sneak peek, and then we're going to get into some demos as well. But here's the security dashboard for AI. And within the security dashboard here, you can see, again, you can see your inventory, you can see your risk signals, and then if I kind of go down a bit, you can look at the specific recommendations that you have around agent sprawl and unauthorized access, data leaks, as well as risks and vulnerabilities, all from one unified dashboard. Now, this doesn't replace the persona-specific tools that we have. So the identity admin is still going to work in Entra, the data security admin is still going to work in Purview, the SOC analyst is still going to be in Defender, but this is really giving you that, that sort of executive view of the risks in a more holistic way. Okay. So I touched on these four things. We're going to double click and go deeper now on each of these. So let's start with agent sprawl and resource access. So as I mentioned, when you're looking at a lot of agents being deployed in your organization, you want to know how many are they going to be supervised, any of them overprivileged, and then how do I manage these things and how do I govern them? And so to support all of those needs, we're introducing Entra Agent Identity. Entra Agent Identity includes the registry, as I mentioned, and includes the ability to govern the life cycle of it, and then protect access to resources through extending conditional access. So this is a big thing. We released the initial set of capabilities earlier this year, and today we're going to release the full set of capabilities. And that's one of the core things that's going to power Agent 365, as well as a lot of the other agent development that happens across the company as well. Now, as I mentioned, in the context of the overall suite, a lot of the identity and access for agents is going to come through Entra. And so what I want to do is invite my colleague up on stage, Netta, to show us a quick demo of Agent Identity. Come on up, Netta.
Thanks, Naren. Let's take a look at what's new in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. This is the new Entra Agent ID overview page. Here, you can see insights about all agents in your organization in a single location. You get a clear view of the total number of agents, how many were recently created, and trends. This helps you quickly understand agent activity and spot changes as your environment evolves. Here, in the new agent registry, I get visibility of all agents in the tenant. You can see here what platform they were built on, if they have an agent ID or not. What's powerful here is that in the agent registry, I have a single place to discover all agents, even those without an agent ID. And no matter which platform they were built on, I can see them all here. Agent 365 also relies on Entra Agent Registry to discover agents. In the All Agent Identity views, I can see details for each agent. This view helps me quickly find new agents within their status. Let's take a look at an individual agent. The HR self-service agent. I can see its status, who it sponsors, what permission it has, and policies. Let's look if you can see here the conditional access policy. Here, I can see that Entra has a conditional access policy set for this agent, ensuring that all high-risk agents are blocked from accessing resources. Entra high-risk agent is based on identity risk signals such as sign-in spikes, agent access by risky users, and more. Entra will block the agent from accessing resources so that you can sleep well at night, knowing that Entra blocks risky agent as needed. Back to you, Arain.
Yep, thank you, Netta. That was awesome. We can give her a hand. Thank you. So you saw the registry, you saw the double click into a particular agent, you saw the identity details, you saw the identity risk specifically called out, and then you saw conditional access being applied against all of that. So that's just the first piece of it. Next up is data oversharing and data leaks. Now this one has been around for a while. It's been around since we've been deploying GenAI apps. 2 years ago when M365 Copilot started to get deployed at scale, it was the #1 thing we heard from customers, so it's not a new thing. But it's important to kind of set the ground of what we're trying to look at. So one is who's using GenAI apps in my organization, what type of apps are being used, what sensitive data is going into those prompts, what data is being processed, and then what data is coming out of those prompts. And to solve all of that, we've been shipping for a while now in Microsoft Purview, not just visibility into the apps, into the data, sensitive data in your organization, but being able to look at the sensitive data in the prompts and responses. And now we're extending that to agents as well. So let me just talk a little bit about what we're doing for agents. So when you switch gears and talk about agents, a lot of the same risks that you have for GenAI apps apply to agents, but then with agents, there's some new things as well. As I mentioned earlier, agents tend to run more autonomously in the background. So when they're running autonomously, how do you track those interactions? And I'll get a little bit more into that because they're not just communicating with users, agents can communicate with agents as well. And so you got to think about agent to user interactions, agent to agent interactions as well. And so what we've been doing is extending all that Microsoft Purview functionality that we've been building for GenAI apps, extending that now to agents as well. So observing agent risk. So now in the data security posture management dashboard, you're going to see the agent risk as well. The insider risk for agents, that's one of my favorites. So insider risk, for those that aren't maybe familiar with Purview, is a capability that allows you to look at how individuals in your organization are handling data. So if someone's being careless about handling sensitive data, their risk score can go up, and based on a higher risk score, you can apply more stringent policies, data loss prevention policies against them. Same concept for agents. If an agent seems to be handling a lot of sensitive information and sharing a lot of information, you can set guardrails, and if it exceeds that, the risk profile goes up of the agent based on the data security risk, and then based on that, you can apply policies and guardrails against it. And then as I mentioned earlier, all the agent interactions, both agent to human, agent to agent, all of that gets audited, and then you can use that audit to deal with, to sort of report out to your regulators, as well as to sort of just look across it and see how is the communication happening, are there any policy violations, and so on and so forth. So to give you a sneak peek of this one, I'm going to invite up awesome Lou on stage, and we're going to show data security posture for agents. Go ahead, Lou.
Thank you, Harain. So,
Yeah, let's get you.
Go ahead. Yep. Thank you. So excited to demonstrate some of our features. Let's start with the new data security posture management experience. So the first thing you'll notice is this featured insights tab. And here you can see the total agents running across your organization. We can see agents with sensitive interactions, and we see high-risk agents across your environment. These metrics remove the guesswork and give security teams a clear starting point for what to investigate, and where to prioritize. This also connects directly to what Judson highlighted earlier about observability at every layer of the stack, and to Vasu's point about security woven into everything we build. So this dashboard is a concrete example of that vision. So naturally, the next place we're going to go to is the AI Observability tab. I think I'm going to have to use this. Yeah. So AI Observability is now this foundation for visibility across your agents. It provides the context security teams need to understand how agents are behaving and where the risks may appear. So here you're going to see metrics such as active versus inactive apps and agents. We can see high-risk agents. We can see agents with sensitive interactions. And key thing to remember is that even inactive agents can still reference corporate data if they aren't properly offboarded or governed. So this view helps teams identify those blind spots. And below that, you can see different individual agents and understand its risk levels, its status, the risk types, the policies. This brings the same rigor we've historically applied to identities and apps into the agent space. So let's check out one of these high-risk agents. So here we're looking at the Zava procurement agent. And up top, you see the agent status. We can see the policy coverage. We can see who owns it. As we saw earlier, this agent is high risk, and that's due to the 14 risky activities that you see down here. This includes exfiltration behaviors. We could see unethical actions. And this is where we introduce the concept of insider risk. So we learned a lot about the behaviors of users from years of identity risk detection. And now we're applying that same discipline to agents, because agents are autonomous. They behave differently. They introduce new risks, as Harain pointed. And that's why we built this dedicated insider risk platform for agents. And to understand what makes this agent risky, we're going to drill down into the Activity Explorer, I believe. And we can see a list of these risky behaviors. Up top, we see this DLP rule match. And we see this because it has the highest risk level. So let's open it up to understand exactly why. So this view shows exactly why the event was considered risky. So besides the agent details or the user details, we can also see the match policy details. And these match policy details shows us the exact policy, the rule that was triggered. It shows us the action that was taken, the message that came, the files associated, and many more. And this just gives admins that visibility they've needed for agents. And this provides the level of details needed to audit, investigate, and respond to agent behavior. So now we're going to go back to the Zava procurement agent page. And next thing we want to do is check out some various recommendations to respond to this agent. So for example, if we want to investigate potential insider risk-like behavior, we can select this, click this investigate alert. And here we can see an insider alert from the agent. So if we take a look at the right-hand side, we can see agent behavior signals such as a sensitive label being removed. We could see a sensitive email being sent. We could see labels being downgraded, the full sequences that are associated with it. And this is just an example of an agent behaving like a human insider would. So now let's recap to kind of bring it back home and recap what we just saw. We saw how Purview provides visibility and protection for agents. With this new unified experience, we can see we get clear visibility and consistent controls. So we can adopt agentic AI confidently while reducing the risks to sensitive data risks. And with that, I'll hand it back to Harain to take us to the next section.
Awesome. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's a great job. So yeah, so you saw the agent risk in the context of identity with Neta, and then you saw agent risk in the context of its handling of data, where it's doing things like down labeling files, trying to email them out, all of that. So we'll detect all of it and assign a data security risk level to the agent based off of that. So pretty cool stuff. One of my favorite features of what we're launching right now. Next up, Shadow AI, threats and vulnerabilities. So like before I mentioned, we've been doing work in all of our products to secure and govern AI workloads. We've been shipping AI security posture management. We've shipped red teaming capabilities inside of Foundry. We've got integration between Defender for Cloud and XDR. Foundry can also send content safety prompt shield signals to Defender XDR. So all of these things is work that we've been doing. And then the question is, okay, what else do we need to do for agents? Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's helpful to, I think, understand a little bit of what makes agents different than just a GenAI app, like a Copilot or just, ChatGPT or something like that, is, of course, the thing that makes it similar is you've got this agent-to-human prompt and response. So that's what we mean by A2H is agent-to-human. But then you have agents that might be interacting directly with some kind of LLM interface or directly with some kind of data source. You might have agents that invoke certain types of apps. You might have agents that work with tools like MCP servers or APIs or other types of search tools. And then finally, you might also have agents that are interacting with other agents. So if you take that data security example we just took about, and we're looking at sensitive information going back and forth, well, now it's not just sensitive information going back and forth between the user and the agent. It's between the agent and the agent and the LLM. So you got to track all of these different pieces. And so this starts to make up the risk profile. And so then you can start to see the new types of risks that you have to think about. In the case of agent to agent, you've got collision and propagation risk. You've got you've got model interaction risk with the LLM models. So there's a number of different ones that we have to think about, and the team's been working across sort of our threat protection and posture portfolio to try and get as broad a view of these risks as we can, so we can detect them more effectively and at runtime. So with that, what we're doing is we're shipping all of this in Defender. We're extending a lot of the Defender protections we've had for AI to agents. So again, on the threat protection side, on the posture management side, as well as the investigation side. And so to get a little bit more into that, I'd like to invite Neda back on stage to show you what that looks like in Defender. So come on up.
Let me show you what this looks like in Defender. So in Microsoft Defender, you now have a unified AI security posture management experience and threat protection for AI agents from build to runtime. The first step in securing an AI agent is gaining visibility of all your AI assets. Defender Asset View now includes a dedicated section for AI agents, offering comprehensive visibility across agents built in Microsoft Foundry and Copilot Studio. This unified control and visibility empowers security administration to minimize agent sprawl and eliminate shadow agents. From the inventory, I can easily open an agent tab and get basic information about this agent. Information like agent ID, deployment models, and security recommendation that help me further understand the risk level. Let me look at this recommendation. Here I can see the security recommendation provides insights around potential risk originating from each agent and gives a remediation step to help AI developers and security admins to improve their agent agentic AI security posture. Here I can see this agent wasn't configured securely. So let's look at the first recommendation. In this recommendation, I can see this agent was developed without system instruction, and description provides additional insights at what that risk is. If system instructions are missing, agent can act unpredictably, and the risk of security breaches may go up. Note that here I also have a remediation steps. I get the specific guidance of what I need to do to fix security issues. This recommendation is available to security teams in Defender, and it's also available in Microsoft Foundry so the developers can take action. This enables me to ensure that I start secure. Now, let me show you one more thing in security posture experience for agents, the attack path analysis for AI agents in Defender. Defender helps visualize attack combinations and helps accelerate remediations. Defender flagged the posture of risk from attacker that could exploit from cloud to cloud, illustrating how code issues can amplify into future attacks. If compromised, an attacker could exploit this and get sensitive data out of this agent from the grounding data. Luckily, Defender provides me all the recommendation and remediation that I need to take in order to harden my environment and start secure. Now, we just saw how Defender helps me start secure with posture. Let me show you how it also helps detect and protect agents against agent-based threats. Here in the Java procurement agent that is using my marketing team is using it to get vendor quotes. In Defender, I can see that there is an incident and the Java procurement agent, so let's take a look. I can see here there are two alerts for this agent where Defender detected a phishing attempt and a jailbreak attempt. A jailbreak is a type of attack when the attacker tries to bypass AI guardrails and trick the agent into doing things it shouldn't. I want to make sure that our procurement agent is trusted and secured before I can let it keep running. So let's investigate and look deeper. When I clicked on the alert, Defender shows me exactly what happened. It reminds me what jailbreak attack is, how it works, and what else I should check in my investigation. making it super easy for me to navigate and determine a response. It also shows me the suspicious prompt that the attacker used, so I know the attacker's intent. Luckily, this jailbreak attempt was blocked and no data was released, so our agent is secure. But knowing the attacker intent helps me investigate and hunt. As we know, attackers will try different methods, so having the attacker intent here is super helpful. These are just a few examples of alerts in Defender threat protection. With Microsoft Defender, you can ensure that your AI asset and agent start secure and stay secure. Back to you, Harain.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Neda. That was great. And I love that. It's, we have this thing, we're like start secure, stay secure. And one of my favorite pieces about this work is the recommendations fed back into Foundry, as I mentioned, so that the developers get them directly and you can fix the posture issues right where the app is built. So that's one of my favorite things. Okay, last but not least, we're getting to the end of this, is regulatory compliance. Almost every conversation I've had over the last couple of years, compliance comes up, and there's just a lot of questions because the landscape's changing so much, it's so dynamic, the regulations aren't fully finalized, everyone's working through this and figuring it out, and we generally as a company work hand in hand with the regulators to try and share our best practices and shape these regulations. We have been shipping again in the product capabilities to support compliance. So we have what's called the Compliance Manager and Purview. We've been doing things like audit and e-discovery in the product for a while in terms of data regulations and data compliance, being able to manage the life cycle, so retention and deletion policies of data, something we've been doing, and then communication compliance around being able to detect policy violations. It might be organizational policy violations like harassment and things like that, being able to detect that with AI apps and agents as well, something that we've been doing. Now, as I mentioned, regulations have been going about globally. This is just a very, very small sample of the different regulations, as I mentioned earlier. The one that's been most mature, I would say, is the EU AI Act. And we've had a product, we've had this capability in the product called Compliance Manager. And what it does is it lets you, it's got these, we've shipped about 300 different templates for different regulations. And based on a regulatory template, it will ask you to do a self-assessment. And based on the self-assessment, some pieces are automated, some pieces are self-assessed. It'll give you a compliance score along with a list of actions and controls that you need to implement to get more compliant with the regulation. The challenge with that has been, though, that as the regulations change, you got to go back to the template or you got to go back to your list of controls and start to append and change that as well. And so that can get cumbersome because the regulations are changing so much. And so what we're introducing at Ignite is this idea of the AI-powered regulatory templates. Well, it turns out that large language models are really good at reading regulations because it's a just giant list of text, and then parsing it out and saying, okay, based on these regulations, I'm going to give you a map of the actions you need to take, and I'm going to map those actions to the specific controls that you need to implement. And so that's a pretty exciting new thing we're releasing. So we want to show you a demo of that, which is the AI-powered regulatory template. So I'm going to call Lou back up on stage to show us the demo. Go ahead, Lou.
So we just saw Harain talk about how many new AI regulations are emerging around the world. So since we're on topic, let's talk about the EU AI Act. And as you can see, this is a very dense regulation. It lays out detailed rules for governing AI. For most orgs, reading through this and turning it into actionable steps is very overwhelming. Teams often spend weeks or maybe even months translating requirements into actions. Like, for example, if it says stronger identity controls, the actual task would be, how do we turn on multi-factor authentication in Microsoft Entra? So today, we're going to focus on Article 9. And here, the question is, how do we convert hundreds of pages of long text into clear, actual steps for teams? So let's flip to Article 9.8. It says that high-risk AI systems must be tested during development and before deployment using predefined metrics. Does it sound straightforward? Well, not quite. The challenge comes when you try to translate this legal text into concrete actions, such as across complex environments, whether that's M365, Azure, or other systems. And this is where AI can help by automating those interpretations and mapping of regulations to actual controls. So we're going to pause here on Compliance Manager, but LLM-based AI is incredibly good at interpreting complex text at scale, which is what compliance teams need right now. With AI-powered regulatory templates, organizations can ingest and analyze global regulations in real time so they can adapt the moment something changes. So let me show you how this works. So we're going to start here in Compliance Manager, as I mentioned, and in this Regulations tab. And all we're going to do is click this Create Template. And all you do is you simply upload a regulation as a PDF. And in this case, the EU AI Act, since we've been talking about this, and then you click Upload. So then it reads and interprets the document, identifying the requirements that matter to your environment. And this allows teams to move from legal text to practical steps quickly and accurately. So once we select the service, and as you can see, Azure AI Foundry, in this example, the PDF is uploaded. And then the AI goes through and scans it for malware. AI parses the text and extracts controls. And then those controls are mapped specifically to specific actions in your environment. So what used to take weeks or maybe even months happens in just minutes. So now we're going to click this Review Draft Template. And after processing, the AI-powered regulatory template displays the extracted chapters, articles, requirements in a clear, actionable format. So let's see how these action steps our organization should take. So from all the extracted content, the AI-powered regulatory template identifies the specific controls that align to Article 9.8 and also provides improvement actions for your team. So overall, AI translates complex regulatory language into practical actions for your systems, helping you stay compliant without the burden of manual interpretation. And because regulations are evolving constantly, the ability to simply upload a document and instantly align them to your organization becomes very essential. And with that, I'll pass it back to Harian to close this out.
All right, awesome job, Lou.
Appreciate
Thank you. So yeah, the predefined templates, we ship about 300 of them. Those are great, but these AI-powered ones, I would say even better because you can be more adaptive and you don't have to wait for the predefined templates to come out and you have more control. So love this one. So just to wrap it up, we talked about these 4 key challenges: agent sprawl and resource access, data oversharing and leaks, shadow AI threats and vulnerabilities, regulatory and compliance. We think this is a pretty holistic view. If there's things that don't fit into these categories, definitely come and talk to me afterwards. I'm always looking to learn new things as they come up, but we've tried to be as complete and holistic as we can. And then when we look at the solution that we're delivering across the Microsoft portfolio, we're going to span data security and compliance, threat protection, identity and access, and governance and safety systems, and do it for copilots and agents, do it for custom-built apps that you would do on Foundry or other platforms, and then as well as the actual foundational models themselves and the cloud infrastructure itself as well. So really looking at it across the board, looking at it end-to-end, and to just give you a sense of just how quickly the team's been moving, we're sort of accelerating that pace of innovation. Here's just a sampling of some of the new features. We've touched on quite a few of these today, but a lot of these things is what we've been coming out. We've been working hard against GenAI apps in the past. This Ignite's been all about agents. But hopefully that gave you a good end-to-end view of all of it. We're going to be here up for a few minutes if you have questions. Hope you enjoyed the translation with the headphones. It was a new experience for all of us as speakers as well. But enjoy the rest of the show, and thank you for your time. Thank you.